General Hospital spoilers tease that a subtle but deeply destabilizing transformation is unraveling in Port Charles, marked by Cody's quiet descent into the tangled psychological maze orchestrated by Kristina. What began as a calculated plan, Cody inserting himself into Ava's life at Kristina's instruction, was once framed as a straightforward manipulation. A seductive performance meant to undermine Ava's emotional footing. But now, something far more complex and dangerous has taken root. One of the most alarming adjustments in Cody's trajectory lies in how willingly he has surrendered his moral compass in favor of Kristina's increasingly unpredictable narrative. The line between mission and obsession has become so faint that Cody no longer seems able to distinguish between who he is and who Kristina needs him to be. It's not just loyalty anymore, it's dependency, an emotional and psychological erosion that reveals just how powerfully Kristina has embedded herself into his decision-making process. This shifting dynamic has bled into every corner of Cody's life, but nowhere more profoundly than in his growing fixation on Ava. Once wary of her past and determined to maintain emotional distance, Cody is now tangled in a growing web of personal confusion. Ava, with her charisma, trauma, and emotional volatility, has become a mirror that Cody can't stop looking into, seeing in her fragments of himself, both what he fears and what he craves. That fixation has reached a new, haunting level, compounded by a revelation that threatens to destroy every remaining boundary of stability. Molly, under emotional duress and in the midst of her own identity crisis, not only kissed Ava, but appears willing to sleep with her. That single act has set off a wave of psychological dissonance that none of them are equipped to manage. For Cody, Molly was supposed to be a source of clarity, a grounding force amidst the moral chaos of his work with Kristina. But the discovery of Molly's potential entanglement with Ava collapses that foundation, leaving Cody unmoored. Now, every emotion he feels, jealousy, guilt, attraction, betrayal, feeds into an obsession that is no longer clearly directed. Is it Ava he wants? Is it Molly he feels he's lost? Or is it Kristina's approval, now embedded into his very instincts, that drives him deeper into this quagmire? As these questions swirl, Cody continues to follow Kristina's agenda, even as it morphs into something crueler, more deranged. His every move is now filtered through the warped lens of what Kristina believes is necessary. And his growing passivity in the face of that manipulation speaks to a much deeper unraveling of identity. Meanwhile, Ava has become more than just a target. She's now the epicenter of a storm she never saw coming, desired by both Cody and Molly, used by Kristina, and perhaps for the first time, truly vulnerable. The knowledge that her every interaction is tainted by hidden agendas, secret obsessions, and performative intimacy leaves her in a state of existential panic. She doesn't know who to trust. And more importantly, she doesn't know who genuinely sees her, or merely sees her as a conduit for their own unraveling needs. The fact that Molly, someone she once viewed as distant and composed, is now willing to throw herself into her bed in the midst of emotional crisis, shakes Ava at her core. This isn't seduction, it's psychological warfare. Cody, caught between the collapsing integrity of his original mission and the spiraling madness that now surrounds him, is nearing a breaking point. His role in Kristina's plot has mutated into something grotesque and unsustainable. He is no longer just an operative, he is a symptom of the chaos. An unwilling participant in a story that has become more real than he ever anticipated. The obsession with Ava is no longer just his, it is shared, mirrored, distorted through every other character in this twisted saga. Molly's descent into emotional instability, Kristina's hunger for control, Ava's rising paranoia, it all feeds into a cycle of desire, deception, and domination. And through it all, Cody remains adrift. No longer sure if he's protecting Molly or punishing her. No longer sure if he desires Ava or despises what she represents. And no longer sure if Kristina is his ally or his captor. What was meant to be a simple infiltration has transformed into an emotional minefield. With every step he takes, Cody finds himself pulled deeper into a world where love, manipulation, and madness have merged into a single, terrifying force, one that may ultimately consume them all. The story of Cody's unraveling had begun as a series of quiet missteps, but it was now exploding into a legacy crisis that stretched across Port Charles, staining every corner of his reputation, threatening the people around him, and redefining the very fabric of his relationships. What once seemed like impulsive choices or accidental entanglements were now being understood as calculated movements within a far more sinister game, one not only influenced but, perhaps, engineered by Kristina, whose fixation on rewriting her place in Sunny's shadowed empire had found its ultimate expression in Cody. And as Cody stood at the center of it all, what he had tried to run from, his name, his bloodline, the fortune he once denied, was now crashing down upon him with the weight of generations, with the full consequence of secrets left too long in the dark. At first, Cody had refused to inherit the Bell fortune. He didn't want to be tethered to the legacy of a man he barely knew and couldn't respect. But those decisions had come back to haunt him. There were unfinished trusts, unresolved claims, hidden properties, and legal ambiguities that now pulled Cody into a web of responsibility and danger. People in high places wanted access to that fortune. People in low places wanted revenge for being left out. And Kristina, ever the opportunist masked as a romantic idealist, had seen in Cody both the vulnerability to manipulate and the influence to exploit. Together they had spiraled into something dangerous, at once lovers, co-conspirators, and adversaries. But this wasn't just about Cody's legacy, it was about his soul. His relationship with Kristina, originally a mission, had morphed into a psychological dependency. She fed his sense of worth even as she pulled him deeper into a storm of betrayal. Their connection was no longer romantic, it was strategic, obsessive, and fatally codependent. Kristina convinced Cody that together they could control Ava, disarm Sunny, and manipulate public perception. She painted visions of power that were seductive, even to a man like Cody who had never sought the spotlight. But in chasing Kristina's vision, Cody was losing himself, and everyone who had ever tried to pull him back. Molly, once a flicker of emotional hope for Cody, had become the tragic witness to his transformation. She had seen him try to love, try to change, and ultimately try to deceive himself into believing he could survive in Kristina's world. But the breaking point came when Molly learned the truth, not just about Cody's role in Kristina's schemes, but about her own emotional confusion and the moment she herself nearly crossed a line with Ava, driven by pain, manipulation, and the desire to feel something other than betrayal. That moment destroyed any illusion of clarity. Now, Cody was spiraling, Molly was collapsing, and Kristina was rising, more emboldened, more dangerous, and more obsessed than ever. Mac, once a steady father figure to Cody, found himself unable to comprehend how his efforts to play matchmaker with Molly had resulted in chaos, public scandal, and emotional wreckage. He had hoped Cody would grow into a man of integrity. Instead, he saw someone consumed by lies and delusion, trapped in a relationship that was more cult than romance. Mac could do nothing now but brace for the aftermath, and possibly prepare for the day he would have to arrest the very man he once called son. Cody's looming exit from Port Charles would not be clean or heroic. It would be fractured, loaded with unanswered questions and unfinished business. There were financial records Kristina had accessed without permission. There were rumors that Cody had secretly changed the terms of Belle's inheritance. There were recordings, confessions made under the haze of obsession and control, that could, if released, destroy not only Cody's life but the reputations of half the town. And worse, there were feelings, real, raw, irreversible, that could not be taken back. Because for all his manipulation, Cody had felt something for Kristina. And for all her coldness, Kristina may have, in her own broken way, loved him too. When Cody leaves Port Charles, if he leaves, it won't be with a suitcase. It will be with ghosts. The ghost of the man he once hoped to be. The ghost of the family he might have had. The ghost of the fortune that was never just money, but a burden. And above all, the ghost of what he and Kristina became, two people so consumed by power, pain, and obsession that they destroyed everything they touched, including each other. Port Charles will try to move on. Molly will try to rebuild. Mac will try to forget. But Kristina won't stop. She'll carry Cody's secrets, his name, and his legacy into her next war. And wherever Cody ends up, whether in hiding, in prison, or simply gone, he will remain a cautionary tale. Not just about power, or love, or betrayal, but about what happens when a man refuses to confront his legacy until it's too late. Cody was never just a victim or a villain. He was both. And now, with his departure looming, everyone in Port Charles must face the wreckage he left behind, and wonder whether he'll ever truly be gone. Molly's world, once defined by order, intellect, and a deep-rooted commitment to justice and truth, is collapsing beneath the weight of betrayal she never thought would come from her own sister. As the truth about Kristina's manipulative involvement in the Cody situation surfaces, it's not just a sense of familial tension that descends upon her, it is a profound, soul-shaking disillusionment. For Molly, the revelation that Kristina may have knowingly drawn Cody into a web of emotional manipulation and seduction, all while pretending to support Molly's emotional well-being, becomes a line that once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. It is not simply about jealousy or romantic entanglement, it is about principles, loyalty, and the very meaning of family. And now, all of that feels like it's being rewritten in front of her, without her consent. What began as suspicion now becomes clarity, and that clarity is brutal. Molly realizes that Kristina hasn't just endangered her romantic connection with Cody, she has redefined herself in a way that places personal desire above the emotional safety of others. And that change doesn't just wound Molly, it enrages her. The quiet, poised legal mind is suddenly fueled by raw emotion. And what was once passive discontent transforms into a mission to expose the depth of Kristina's betrayal. Molly begins to view every interaction with Kristina through a new lens, conversations twisted with false compassion, gestures that once seemed supportive now reek of ulterior motives. She starts piecing together a larger puzzle, suspecting that Kristina's manipulations may stretch beyond Cody, perhaps into other personal or even public matters. And the rage inside her solidifies into something more dangerous, resolve. In private, Molly wrestles with the implications of what this has done to her, how the betrayal has cracked her own sense of identity. For so long, she was the sister who kept things together, who rose above drama, who leaned on logic instead of impulse. But now, she finds herself pacing late at night, consumed with thoughts not just of anger, but of revenge. Her mind begins drawing lines between everything Kristina has done and the psychological fallout Molly is now experiencing. She doesn't just want to win back control, she wants to see Kristina face consequences, to understand what it feels like to lose everything she's weaponized. Even Mac, who had once proudly tried to play matchmaker between Cody and Molly, is stunned by the collapse of that potential romance. He finds himself caught in the middle of a storm he inadvertently helped fuel, watching two young women unravel in front of him, each becoming more volatile, more unpredictable, more willing to cross lines. He tries to offer support, but the damage is done. What once seemed like an innocent romantic entanglement has become a political, emotional, and psychological battlefield. Meanwhile, Kristina, perhaps oblivious to the full extent of the harm she's caused, or perhaps too far gone to care, is leaning further into her pursuit of Cody. And even that appears less rooted in love and more in possession. The boundary between desire and dominance begins to blur, and Molly watches in horror as Kristina's behavior escalates. Her justifications become increasingly self-centered, and the emotional games grow darker. There is an eerie symmetry emerging, Molly, obsessed with proving the truth, Kristina, obsessed with protecting her illusion. And Cody, caught in the middle, becomes both pawn and catalyst, his decisions capable of tipping everything in one direction or the other. But it doesn't end there. The ripple effects of Kristina's choices begin infecting others, Molly's relationships with her colleagues, with TJ, with family members who now feel forced to choose sides. The bitterness spreads, and Molly begins to lose her grip on the version of herself she once was. She's no longer just the victim, she's becoming someone new. Someone willing to fight back on Kristina's terms, someone willing to play dirty if necessary. That transformation terrifies her, yet it also energizes her. And that duality, mourning the sister she's lost while discovering the fighter she's becoming, is the new emotional terrain she must navigate. In Port Charles, people start whispering. What happened between Molly and Kristina? Is Cody really worth this kind of war? But for Molly, this isn't about Cody anymore. It's about a war of integrity, of power, of reclaiming the narrative that Kristina tried to rewrite. Every interaction becomes a test of restraint. And Molly knows that the next mistake, hers or Kristina's, could push them beyond reconciliation forever. And in that space of looming consequence, Molly stands ready. Not just to survive the storm, but to become the storm if she has to. In the tangled web of emotional manipulation, obsession, and long-standing family tension that has come to define the Corinthos-Davis dynamic, a dangerous storm is brewing, one that now threatens to consume Molly in ways she never anticipated. What began as a simmering rivalry between sisters has evolved into a psychological war of attrition, and at the heart of it stands Kristina, whose reckless emotional strategies had begun to unravel with devastating consequences. Molly, long the voice of reason and structure in a family often defined by chaos, now finds herself the unintentional pawn in a game she never agreed to play, a game that has pulled Ava into its orbit and placed Molly directly in the path of calculated, unapologetic destruction. Kristina, driven by a relentless need for emotional validation, has made several questionable choices under the guise of loyalty and passion. Her romantic entanglement with Cody, initially designed as both an escape and a challenge to Molly's tightly wound morality, has grown into something more insidious. Fueled by jealousy, rejection, and the deep-rooted inferiority she has always felt in comparison to her more accomplished sister, Kristina's fixation on Cody has spiraled into obsession. Rather than confront her insecurities or accept the boundaries that Molly attempted to respectfully enforce, Kristina responded with subversion, manipulating Cody, pushing Ava into Molly's world, and quietly orchestrating moments meant to erode Molly's self-assurance. But Kristina's growing obsession has drawn the attention of a far more dangerous figure, Ava. Always a force of volatility in Port Charles, Ava thrives in the darkness others flee from. Her history is marked by betrayal, survival, and an almost preternatural ability to exploit human weakness. What makes Ava truly terrifying, however, is not her impulsiveness, it is her surgical precision when she decides someone stands in her way. And now, as Kristina's manipulation stokes a fire between Molly and Cody, Ava sees an opportunity. Whether she intends to protect Kristina, secure Cody's loyalty, or simply reclaim control over a situation she believes Kristina has fumbled, Ava's presence has escalated the situation into something far more menacing. Molly, unaware at first, begins to sense the shift too late. What started as emotional friction with Kristina becomes an undercurrent of paranoia and danger she cannot easily explain. Cody, torn between his lingering feelings for Molly and the seductive pull of Ava's world, becomes increasingly unreliable. Meanwhile, Ava inserts herself more deeply into the narrative, not with open hostility, but with subtle, unnerving tactics that leave Molly questioning her own safety. A passing glance that lingers too long. A cryptic comment about how accidents happen. A strategically leaked piece of information only Ava could have known. The effect is cumulative and deliberate. Molly is being isolated. The true breaking point comes when Molly discovers that Ava has not only manipulated Cody's perception of her but has also gained Kristina's full support under the guise of sisterly solidarity. The betrayal is twofold and cuts deeply. Kristina, so blinded by her need to win, has placed her trust in the one woman capable of annihilating Molly's peace, and now, that woman holds all the power. It's not just about romantic rivalry anymore. This has morphed into a campaign of psychological erosion, a slow unraveling of Molly's carefully constructed world. Her professional reputation, her sense of family, her emotional security, all of it is now under siege. What makes this more insidious is that Molly has no clear path forward. Confrontation only feeds into Ava's control. Distance only confirms Kristina's suspicions. And Cody, once her confidant, now offers little more than confusion and half-truths. Ava, for her part, remains cool and composed. moving through the chaos like a conductor leading a symphony of destruction. Every moment is calculated, every word chosen for maximum emotional impact. And as the tension rises, so too does Ava's proximity to Molly's inner circle. Molly, ever the rational one, begins to fray at the edges. She grows more suspicious, more reactive, more vulnerable to the whispers of doubt that Ava plants with surgical precision. Her relationship with her mother, her colleagues, even Alexis, all begin to reflect the strain. Ava's aim is not simply to destroy Molly's relationship with Cody. It is to shatter her identity, one crack at a time. And Kristina, still under the illusion that Ava is helping her rather than using her, becomes complicit in this slow, merciless dismantling. But Ava underestimates one thing, Molly's resilience. What she doesn't anticipate is that beneath the legalese and calm demeanor lies a survivor of her own kind, a woman who, when cornered, doesn't collapse but adapts. As Molly begins to piece together Ava's true role in the unraveling of her life, she shifts. Her grief becomes strategy. Her fear becomes fuel. And in the quiet hours of the night, Molly begins to chart her response, not for revenge, but for liberation. Kristina, meanwhile, begins to sense that the world she built with Ava is not what she imagined. The emotional intensity that once made Ava feel like a savior now begins to reveal its true nature, manipulative, possessive, destructive. As Ava's grip tightens, Kristina must face the reality that her sister may have been the only one trying to protect her all along. But by then, it may be too late. The war has already begun. And as Port Charles watches, a new kind of battle plays out, one not of gunfire or mob hits, but of whispered threats, stolen allies, and emotional warfare. Molly is no longer just a sister or a scorned lover, she is now the reluctant heroine in a psychological war that could cost her everything. And somewhere in the shadows, Ava smiles, because the most dangerous weapons are the ones you never see coming.